Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Jason KO4 TFE back with you today to hopefully finish up the top assembly board for the TR-35 that we're building. There's not too many steps left, but it is kind of scary because we're doing some front panel alignment. So we're going to bring the front panel in and use this for an alignment jig. So I have some clamps and stuff that we've got for that when we need it. I haven't read through the instructions for this section again, just to refresh myself before we get moving. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and finish up. So where we left off, we had basically put in some LEDs, some resistors, a socket, and the screen, the crystal, and a few other little components. So today, the first thing we're going to do is we actually have some capacitors. I should have stopped at this after these last time, but I stopped a little bit too early, but that's okay. So we're going to go ahead and get these capacitors installed. So basically we have two capacitors, C3 and C13. They're both 100 microfarad. So I'm going to check. I've not found anything wrong with this kit so far. In fact, I've been incredibly impressed with it. Look at this under the scope here and see what we've got. There we go, 100 microfarad. And let's see if we can find this guy, 100 microfarad. So, like I said, this kit, I mean, is just stellar. The layout is very organized. The assembly of all the surface mount parts is just excellent. The surface finish of all the pads is amazing. The kit's well organized, or the parts that we need are well organized. If you have been on the fence about ordering one of these, do it. It's 100% worth it. So far it's been a pretty easy and a fun build. So C3 and C13 is what we're looking for, and the long lead, which is the positive lead. So on an electrolytic, these are polarized and they will explode if you put them in backwards. So we have a negative stripe and then one lead. Let me see if I can get it better. So there's two leads here. As you can see, one lead is facing a white stripe. That's the negative side. So the positive side is going to go to the square hole. So we're going to look for C3 first of all. Let's see where that is. I may have to bring the schematic up on the PCB layout, because some of the screen print on these capacitors is kind of removed by the holes. So okay, so C3 is in the lower right-hand corner. Which is this guy here. And we want the long lead to go in the square hole, which is the bottom one. One important point it mentions on these capacitors is you want to make sure that they're completely flush to the board, or the case won't go together. So I'm going to fold our leads over like we normally do. And then once I get this guy just kind of tacked into place, I'm going to push down on the case when I heat it up, just to make sure that we get an extra flush there, because we don't want to have them sticking up. We want the case to go together nicely. Alright, so I'm going to put some pressure on the back side and heat this up, just to make sure, cool it off a little bit. And let's go ahead and do our other lead. Apply heat evenly to the pad and the component lead. Okay, so now while they're both kind of warm, I want to push again from the other side. Alright, there we go. So now we're going to clip our leads off flush. I'm going to do this off camera a little bit just so I can get them in the trash can. Alright, so that was C3, and I think we wanted C13. Yeah, C13. I think he's on the top left. Yep, he's kind of in the top towards the middle. So this is C13. Let's make sure. Yep, C13 is just a little bit away from our LED there. So there's our LED, and C13 will be just slightly over there. And again, the long lead is going to go into our square hole, which is on the right in this case. We're going to hold them really flush. We're going to fold our leads over. We're going to tack one lead into place just to kind of make sure he stays. And we're going to apply pressure to the other side just so that we get a nice flush fit. Now we'll do the other lead. And since the part can kind of loosen up when you do that, let's put some pressure on the other side, heat up both of these leads, and make sure he's good and flush. And he's looking good and flush, so let's go ahead and clip these leads. And let's go ahead and look and see how we did. Bring it in a little closer. Focus down. There we go. Alright, not too bad on that guy. And C3 was down here, so let's look at C3. Those look okay. I'm going to apply a little bit of heat again just to flow that solder just a little bit. We're going to make sure we're still pretty flush. There we are. And then C13 over here. I'm just going to reflow this just a bit. Just to make them look a little neater. Alright, still flush on the top. So let's go ahead and check mark this guy off. Step 8. So now we got 3 47 mic caps. So again, I'm going to check these. I've not found anything wrong with anything in this kit again, but never hurts to do a little due diligence. So 47, and numbers 47. Another thing I like about these kits is it uses really high quality parts. These are really nice quality capacitors. If you get counterfeit electrolytics, they can leak over time and then you end up having to replace them. So let's see, C4 I believe I saw in the bottom right hand corner. Yep, so C4 is down here. Same thing, longer lead, the positive lead is going to go to the square hole. Just make sure what I'm looking at here. The square hole's to the left, so let's put the long lead to the left. Once again, we're going to hold them flush, we're going to bend our leads. Just tack in just a little bit in place. Put some pressure on them to keep them flush. Now we'll do our other lead. Take this a bit. This guy. Alright, make sure we're still good and flush. Yep. Alright, so we got C4, we're looking at C28, which is also down here. On the bottom. Our square hole looks like it's towards the bottom. It is. Let's put this guy through our holes. Make sure you on lead. Hold and flush, bend our leads. Tapping in place. Make sure he's flush. Solder this lead. A little more to this guy. When I tack him, I just put a little bit in case I have to remove it. So, just got that. You always have to touch him up a little bit. He's looking good and flush. And then we're looking for C29, which is right above him, and I believe the hole is also, or the square hole rather, towards the bottom again. So we're going to put our long lead towards the bottom right here. Hold him flush, bend him over, and tack in place. You can see too, this pin is not round, so I'm going to tack that one because it'll be a little easier to get it hot. Let's go ahead and heat this guy up. He must be on the ground. He's kind of hard to get heating up here. Alright, so now let's inspect our work here. Alright, so there's one. There's two. And there's three. Those all look good, so I'm just going to try to clip them. Flush to the board. Alright, let's see what those look like. Alright, so we got all the capacitors done. So now is the part where we have to start soldering or start assembling our jacks to get in the right place. So for our 3.5 millimeter jacks here, I'm going to first straighten any bent pins. I have some needle nose somewhere. Here we go. So let's straighten any bent pins we've got. And these go on the bottom of the board. So J3, 4, and 5 all get soldered in from the underside. And again, everything needs to be nice and flush. I think what I'm going to try to do is put all these in at once and then go back and solder. And these things, jacks like this that have a lot of metal, they're pretty hard to remove if you do something wrong. So you want to make sure and do it right the first time. Alright, so everybody's looking good and flush. It's a nice tight fit actually, which is good. now we're going to solder. We've got 15 connections here to solder, so let's just hold that guy there. Just get them starting heating up. Like I said, these will take a while to heat up because they are a lot of metal. But we want to do the same thing we always do. We hold the iron to the pad and the lead on the component, and you apply solder to the other side, and it'll let you know when it's ready. It'll heat up and melt. There we go. So we're getting some good melting there. We'll do the same thing here. We'll do the same thing here. And then rotate them a little bit so we can get these, because these two pins are 90 degrees from the others. A little bit of a pain to get to. I could apply the iron on the other side, but I really don't want to get too close to those surface mount components. Alright, let's check him out. So he's still looking good and flush. Let's see what the pins look like here. I have to back this up a little bit. No short between those two pins that are really close together, which is good. This back one may need a little bit more solder. Let's get a little bit more solder on this guy. Now there we go. So he's got a little pyramid around him. That's what we want. So let's move to the next one. I'm going to do this bottom one here. And once again, you just want to apply the heat to the component in the pad and let it heat up. This is going to take a minute. Having a fat tip, or at least a medium one like this, is nice. If you got a skinny tip, it'll work, but it'll take you a lot longer. Depending on your iron too, if you get into trouble, you can actually, if you have a replaceable tips, which you should if you're going to do any project like this, you can put a wider, like a chisel or a wider wedge on there, and that helps heat up, transfers a lot more heat to the part. Alright, let's inspect. Actually, first let's make sure we're still good and tight to the board. We are. So now let's look at our pads. That guy's a little dry. So our middle pin and our back pin here, I'd like to get a little more solder on. That guy's looking good now, as is that guy. Alright, cool. And we're still flush. So let's go ahead and solder these pins again. Just lather, rinse, and repeat. Just take your time and be patient. Don't get impatient. It takes some time to heat up. If you try to rush it though, you'll end up with a cold solder joint. You want to heat up the other side from where you're bringing in your solder. And when it gets hot enough, the solder will melt and the capillary action will just pull it down through the hole and fill that via up real nicely. If you try to rush it and melt the solder just on the top, you won't actually get a good full connection. I can feel it kind of starting to stick. It's getting hot there. Yeah, solder. And you don't want to have a big mound of solder here, so I like to put a little bit in. See how it looks. You just want a little bit of a pyramid on top, just like all the rest of our connections. It can take a little bit to fill these up. Actually, again, you don't want to overfill them, so we're just gonna, you can always add more. Alright, it looks like I can see visually this one needs a little bit. Alright, let's see what we look like. We are still flush. And this front pan definitely needs some more here. This one all looks a little bit peckish here, so I'm going to put a little bit more in all these. Alright, now let's see what we look like. All good except for that middle one. And he's still okay. I just like to have a little bit more of a pyramid on top there. There we go. Alright, we're good there. So we install and solder our jacks against the bottom, straighten the pins, and solder them all in. So we got that done. Alright, I think this part is going to take a little bit of patience. So we have 3 switches here and 6 nuts. And the 3 of the nuts are to be used as spacers, so we're going to install a single nut onto each of the center bushings here. And I'm just going to hand tighten them, and he says tighten them for a snug fit. So we're going to hand tighten 3 of them here. And then we'll come back with the pliers and snug them up. Alright, so now we're just going to snug these up. And then we're going to set these aside for the moment. We're going to prep our potentiometers. Alright, I'm going to get some of this plastic out of the way just so I don't lose track of stuff. Alright, so now we've got some potentiometers here. So these have a nut and a washer, and it looks like these are all supposed to be used as spacers already. So we're just going to check and make sure they're tight. So far so good. Yep, those are all good and tight. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do, so we flipped the board over. One thing of note too, I have not put nail polish on these yet. I want to make sure we get a good case fitment. I was thinking another thing you might possibly be able to use is to put some blue thread lock on the bolts before you tighten it down, but I'm going to follow his suggestion and just use some clear nail polish to keep those nuts from backing off. But we're going to flip the board over and have the display up and the jacks closest to us. And we're going to take switch 1, which is going to be the on-off toggle. That's a momentary, so here's the on-off toggle. So we want the slot in the bushing. So let me see if you can see this here. So you see how there's a slot right there? That's going to go toward the center of the board. It's hard to see without looking at it under here. All right, so there's the slot. So that's going to go towards the center in the S1 position. Now, one thing about this step is we're not soldering anything until we get everything in place. Place the 2 remaining spring return switches into S2 and 3 with the slot towards the center. So there's our slot. There's our slot, so it's going to go towards the center. So those 3, and you can see how these kind of rock, they don't snap into place, so that's why we want to use the excuse me, we want to use the case as a template to make sure we're all in the right places. So now we're going to place the volume control pot, which is going to read either A5K or A10K. There's B2K. So I believe this says A10K. Yep, A10K. So this is the volume control pot. Okay, there we go. So there's actually labels on the board. I don't know if you can see. Let me bring it over here. So that says A5K. This one says B1K, and this one says B10K. So that tells us where we're going to go. So we're going to straighten any bent pins, just like we did with the jacks. Actually, I have a couple of bent pins on this guy. Here. Alright, so one thing too, when he mentions bent pins, I'm assuming he means about the 3 connection pins. On every potentiometer I've seen, so let me show you a close up here, the outside legs have this bend, and that allows them to kind of snap and hold into place in the board, and it also provides a little bit of mechanical support because you're kind of wiggling and twisting on these, so having that little bit of a bend helps it press against the back of the board. So, alright, so R1, the volume control, is A10K in our case. He said A10 or A5, so that's fine. R26 is A1K, B1K, or B2K. So this is a B2K. Yep, and that's going to be R26, so we're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to straighten these pins up. I actually still got a little bit of a bent pin here. It's a little far out here. Just kind of squeezing in just a bit. Triple seeing this here. There we go. Here's a little bit tight to fit. The outer pins were bent just a little bit. Okay. The transmit power is R27. No, R24 is transmit power and R27 is key or speed. They're both B10K. So there's a B10K. And let's see, there's a B10K. So let's check our leads. This guy's got some bent leads. Again, just take your time, don't force anything. You don't want to damage the board or bend the leads beyond repair. sure everybody's kind of seated in there. There's our 3 switches. Alright, so now the last part in our kit here is the optical tuning encoder. So it has a nut and a plastic spacer. So we want to take the nut off and remove the nut. We got some tape around here to protect the pins. It looks like they are much smaller than the pins on the other guys. Okay, I see. So we actually have a little piece of foam. When you take this off, I would be careful and just pull the tape from both sides so that you can pull the pad straight off. You don't want to bend any of those very small, delicate pins. So we're just going to carefully align him. See if I can maybe, I'm not going to be able to show you, but okay, so all 6 pins are through the board there. We want to make sure again that our white plastic spacer is there. Now we're going to take the top, I'm going to carefully bring him down over all of our connections. Go. Alright, so we're going to make sure here that we're making contact with the spacers on the top. The metal spacers here should be making contact with the top of the board. You kind of feel it if I wiggle it in place. So it feels like we're good. So I'm going to verify that again before I clamp this guy. But now we have, so we're going to use this as our guide so that when we solder everybody in place, they stay in the right positions if we want. So these are little mini clamps I picked up at Harbor Freight here in the US. These are about 60 or 70 cents a piece. They sell them in packs of 6 as well. The 6 packs that I saw were really stiff springs, and I didn't want to put that much pressure on the case. So I bought these so that they're still pretty stiff, but I don't want to damage the board of the case. The other part of that too, I'm going to try, I think, to see if I can fold over a little bit of microfiber here. If you had some felt or something to put on the clamps, that would probably be good. But you don't want to keep the clamps from making good contact. You don't want them to slip. But at the same time, I don't want to mar the case, the face of the case up either. He kind of has his right in the center, so I'm going to move this guy over just a bit. I'm going to move this guy over just a bit. Okay, so now we're temporarily going to secure these switches with their nuts to the front. You want to make sure when you do this, you're gentle. You don't want to scratch up the sticker that's on the front. Alright, so I'm going to try to snug these up ever so gently without scratching the case. Sorry if you can't see this, but I'm just trying to be careful here. Alright, and now we're going to put the nut on the tuning encoder. Take it off. And I'm going to gently, again, try to carefully snug this guy up. And I'm trying to be careful on making sure that the end of the pliers is well away from the front face. Alright, so we're clamped. We've got our nuts on. So now what we want to do is make sure that the board is centered in the case and it's flush. You don't want it to be raised on one side or the other. If it is, you want to figure out why and fix that now, because it won't go together otherwise. Okay, well, it looks like I'm centered, maybe off by 1 millimeter, but there's not really that much play in the connections that I have here. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to call that good. And I'm going to start soldering here. Put a lot of solder. I'm also going to kind of push on the board a little bit while I do this, just to make sure everybody's tight. Again, there's a lot of metal in these switches and these connections, so it'll actually heat it up pretty quickly though. Slipped off there. Looks like I got the ground plane and the board heated up good, so it's everybody's flowing nicely here. I think we have 35 connections soldered here total. Alright, so there's 9, 26 more to go. Be careful too when you're doing this. You're going to be close to other components, so make sure, like this trim pot right here, make sure to not touch it with your iron, or you can melt it. there's 20, we had 9, 29, we have 6 left, so looks like we just have this encoder, which I'm going to actually bring my microscope close here to me. If I can. Because these are really small. I might even need to change my tip here. Let's see if we can do this carefully. Alright, I think that's good. Let's inspect all of our work here. So we had these 9 connections up here, which were our switches. Okay, and we had 20 connections down here. Let's look at all the round lugs here first. That's good. Now let's look at these 3. Those look good. That one middle one there was kind of a bear. That's number 2 there, and I want to put. Actually, I'm going to put a little bit of touch up on all 3 of those. For some reason they didn't fill up quite the way I'd like. I know I'm feeding from the same side here, but just kind of running out of room. Alright, let's look at these guys again. It's much better, much better. Alright, I'm happy with that. Alright, and with that, we are done with the upper board. So let's unclamp ourselves here, and then we want to take these screws off, and obviously don't lose them because you will need them for final assembly. I actually kept one of the Ziploc bags from a previous, I think it was the OLED screen, and I'm keeping all the loose parts in there so that I don't lose them. And they're in the box with everything else. Let's Again, I'm just trying to loosen these up without touching the actual sticker. And then we can just finish them up by hand. Alright, so there's our completed top board. That looks pretty good. No, I think I probably should leave that guy on there. So with that, I'm going to pack up these extra parts I have with the case screws. I don't want to lose those. I don't want to lose these nuts either. So I'm going to pack all this up so I don't lose it, and I'm going to protect it all, and then we'll be back soon to finish up to start and maybe complete. I don't know how long the bottom board takes, but we will meet again to finish up the bottom board. Until then,